Hello and welcome to Cultural Apologists React for today, September 8th, 2024. This is an AI-generated podcast and can make mistakes. Use it for generating possible ideas, but don't rely on it as an authoritative guide to the day's news or to the details of cultural apologetics. Story: Private prison operator Serco faces potential sanctions and a class action lawsuit for its oppressive treatment of prisoners at Australia's largest jail, Clarence Correctional Centre. After a guard was assaulted by one prisoner, Serco locked down 175 inmates in their cells for 5 days, imposed further penalties on some, and restricted others to their cells for extended periods. The New South Wales Ombudsman deemed this response unreasonable and oppressive, finding no evidence of a riot despite charges filed. Legal experts argue Serco should be fined, and a potential class action could see affected inmates eligible for $5,000 or more in compensation for false imprisonment. So how might we think about this story from the standpoint of cultural apologetics? This news story about the potential class action lawsuit against Serco, the private operator of Clarence Correctional Centre in New South Wales, offers a fascinating case study through which we can examine deeper issues in our modern approach to justice and punishment. As Chesterton would say, we no longer lock a man up for doing something. We lock him up in the hope of his doing nothing. Utopia of usurers. This quote aptly describes the situation where Serco locked down all 175 inmates in one section for 5 days as punishment for an assault on a guard by one inmate. This incident reveals how our justice system has become increasingly focused on preventing future crimes rather than punishing past ones. The lockdown became a measure to prevent further incidents, not as direct punishment for what had already happened. This approach undermines the principle of individual responsibility and creates a culture of suspicion among inmates. It reflects Chesterton's argument in Orthodoxy, that modern society often confuses causes with effects. In this case, Serco treated the symptom, the assault, without addressing the underlying issues that led to it. The fact that most inmates had not witnessed the assault but were still punished raises questions about fairness and proportionality in our justice system. Chesterton would likely argue that this approach shows how we've lost touch with natural law and common sense in our pursuit of order and control. As he noted, we may and must take account of the person by whom and the circumstances under which the crime has been committed. Utopia of usurers. In this case, we need to consider both the actions of Serco's management and the conditions that led to the assault. From a Christian perspective, Chesterton's emphasis on original sin is crucial in understanding why humans tend towards evil acts. This worldview would suggest that incidents like the assault are not isolated events, but part of a broader struggle between good and evil. The approach taken by Serco fails to recognize this fundamental aspect of human nature as understood through a Christian lens. Furthermore, Chesterton's belief in free will is highly relevant here. By locking down all inmates, Serco is treating them as if they had no free will or moral agency, which goes against the Christian understanding of human nature. This approach fails to recognize that individuals have the capacity for both good and evil choices. The sacramentalism that Chesterton discusses in Orthodoxy can also be applied to this situation. The lockdown could be seen as an attempt to create a sacrament of order through external measures rather than addressing the internal spiritual needs of inmates and guards alike. This fails to address the deeper issues of sin and redemption that underlie such violent incidents in correctional facilities. In his essay, What's Wrong with the World?, Chesterton argues that we often try to solve problems by creating more rules and regulations, which can lead to further complications. This is exactly what happened in this case. Serco's strict lockdown policy aimed at preventing future incidents, but ended up causing suffering and potential legal consequences. Chesterton would likely argue that a truly Christian approach to justice involves both punishment and redemption. By focusing solely on punishment through collective action, Serco fails to address the deeper issues of sin and redemption that underlie such violent incidents in correctional facilities. In conclusion, this story not only reveals problems with privatized corrections, but also highlights our need for a more holistic, Christian approach to justice. one that recognizes human nature as fallen yet capable of redemption. As Chesterton would likely say, given this principle, it is evident possible to make the mere conditions of punishment more moderate, or, more probably, more secret, utopia of usurers. This quote underscores the need for a balanced approach that addresses both the external and internal aspects of human nature in our systems of justice. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Cultural Apologists React. Be sure to come back tomorrow for a new take on the day's news from the standpoint of Christian cultural